There are many of us who came to the city at a time when it was going through change. Come to think of it, I've been here 12 years and the city hasn't stopped changing, not once. 12 years before that, it looked even more different. Go back another 12, another 20, another 50. And if you're like me, the first thing you will ask yourself is, where did all the black folks and all that beautiful culture go? Meet my dear friend Farnell Newton, one of Portland's most beloved musicians and truly a living historian. He came to the city 22 years ago by way of Oberlin, Ohio, a graduate of the prestigious Oberlin Conservatory of Music, who was drawn to Portland by what else? Its rich black music history.
And I've been here ever since.
What were you doing before you moved here?
Before I moved here, I was just wrapping up my bachelor's degree in music at Oberlin Conservatory of Music, and I already had a job here in Portland with Portland Parks and Rec because I came out ahead of time. So, working in the Columbia Villa, the original Columbia
Villa.
Yes.
Still, it's not there anymore.
No, they tore it down and rebuilt it.
Obviously, this was a very different Portland, but I feel like saying that you can easily say that 3 years ago was a very different Portland.
Yeah.
The Portland that you saw, though, especially in that role, is...
It's totally different now. 22 years ago, man,
so
totally different.
What was that neighborhood? Let me go back to that.
I mean, when I moved there, it was primarily black neighborhood, low income, poor. What is it? I think it was labeled at the time like the highest percentage of low poverty in the state of Oregon lived in the Columbia Villa.
What happened to it?
I mean, they basically shipped a bunch of people out and gave them Section 8 in different parts of the city, especially in the numbers past, 82nd, and tore down the whole community and rebuilt it from scratch and made it into basically a suburb and still in a city.
This is in the last 22 years.
Yeah.
This is kind of in line keeping up with the history of this city.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Before that.
Oh, yeah.
Way before that.
That was kind of like before any other place was doing it. Like, they literally gutted and moved, I mean, I don't remember how many houses there were, but, they tore up a whole community and displaced them. And then they really weren't trying to, move them back in. I think the Housing Authority had, hey, we'll get a certain percentage of them, try to get them back in. But then the other houses are for, first-time buyers. And then the other percentage of the houses are for people who could just come in and buy a really, really nice house. Because I bought my house 2 blocks away from the Columbia Villa back in 2002 for $145,000, which is incredible when you think about it at the time. Now, where everything costs $600,000 and up. So
$145,000 for a home 2 blocks from the old Columbia Villa. I'm not gonna lie, the Columbia Villa was rough. A local newspaper once referred to it as Portland's ghetto, but the villa didn't start out that way. Quite the opposite, actually. But like other black cities in America, when the 70s came, it became a product of the crack and heroin epidemic and a victim of the lack of resources available to people like myself and people like my friend Farnell, the non-whites. As Farnell just said, the average cost of a home in Portland as of 2022, $604,000. You've seen these changes within these neighborhoods, right?
Yeah.
Some of these that have a history of being music neighborhoods.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, before I moved here, just the history of, Northeast Portland with the building of the Rose Quarter and, Mississippi Avenue and Williams Avenue and such. A lot of that stuff is they moved people out and displaced them and priced them out to where they had to live somewhere else cheaper. And the only place at the time was cheaper was in the numbers.
When we say numbers, we mean out.
Usually past 100, 100.
So at least 5 miles, from Portland proper.
Yeah.
Correct. Some of those neighborhoods we were talking about, the Williams, the Mississippis, even Alberta, these are Killingsworth. These are some of the more popular
neighborhoods. Like when people look up Portland and places to go, they usually end up trying to figure out how to get themselves around that by walking distance. Do you think that there's an understanding there that these used to be black neighborhoods? And do they even care?
I don't think people care. I mean, I don't feel like they don't even want to care. They just want to be somewhere that's hip, cool, that's as someone has said, Instagrammable. You know, that's what they want, somewhere that's hip and things. They don't really realize that was a historic black neighborhood, or that was a black up-and-coming black neighborhood for young people in the 50s or whenever. You know, it's just like, they're just like, hey, I could go eat my fancy brunch and take some pictures and go back to my home, wherever it's at.
Let's go back to the music conversation. So you still have these legends coming into Portland, going into downtown for some of these clubs that were more known. But black folks that wanted to see them would have to catch them somewhere else entirely. We're talking about these neighborhoods that existed, that had a thriving music scene. And this is not something over the last 10 years. This is something that goes back quite a long time here, historically. And you have some amazing talent that came out of here.
Yeah, I mean, definitely.
What were those neighborhoods? Where were these places, and what were the places?
I mean, you know, before I ever moved here, you know, Northeast Portland was like a hub of like blues and soul and, you know, definitely Williams and MLK. You know, Paul Knowles Sr. had a club back in the day called the Cotton Club, and they would have all kind of people, you know, from like Duke Ellington to soul musicians and jazz musicians come into those establishments, and because that's where you was accepted and felt comfortable being in and such. City of Portland over the years, you know, we've seen so many changes from jazz to hip hop and soul shows and such, and you know, venues closed and forced to close, and you know, dealing with fire chiefs and fire alarms.
Fire chiefs tend to show up at hip hop shows.
Oh yeah,
especially in Portland. What blew me away about the city before I even moved is that it had this history with it, but you still have like a thriving punk scene.
Oh yeah,
that they did crazier shit.
Oh, of course, the punk scene is notorious for tearing up and trashing and destroying everything. You know, like other people just want a spot that they could just go to and enjoy themselves and not have to have too much drama.
Until the fire chief showed up.
For many, the city has always been a reflection of its past. In the 1840s, over 12,000 immigrants from the Midwest made a voyage to what was then known as Oregon country. Very quickly, they began to settle in and creating a place that was welcoming for all who were white. The people that were here before them immediately felt that racist sentiment that was brought along. It was shortly after that Oregon became an official state, with laws designed to prohibit slavery and exclude Negroes, Chinamen, Kanakas, and Indians from coming to Oregon. By 1857, it became part of the state constitution. Now, I know what you're probably thinking. This is just a common story in the history of this country. The thing about Portland, though, is that it's constantly wrestling with this history and its own present time identity, often trying to sell itself on the idea of being a liberal country within a historically racist state. The same people that hang BLM signs from the windows of their home are the same people who have contributed to the gentrification of historically black neighborhoods within the city. Hearing this man, Mr. Newton, it's like listening to your old relative remind you of your own history. I hear him speak, and I listen. I close my eyes. I think of what it must have been like to live in those neighborhoods during that time. Oh, Paul's Paradise, the Frat Hall, the Savoy, Jackie's, Dude Ranch, the Cotton Club. It's hard to believe that so many jazz legends once made their way through this town and played at those venues. What I would give to be alive during that time. What I would give to be alive during that time. What I would give to be alive during that time.